Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. It is Sunday afternoon, about 4 p.m. Eastern time. Um, we've kind of been going every other week. It seems like there's not as much to talk about sports wise, and summer's always slow. I've got something, he's got something, whatever it is. So, but it's good to be on with you. Got some stuff that I want to talk about, and Clark's got some stuff he wants to talk about, so we'll try to get through it. It's probably going to be a little bit shorter today. Um, First thing that kind of like piqued my interest story that's kind of going around. So the University of Northwestern fired their football coach, Pat Fitzgerald, he's been there for 17 years as a head coach. Then he played there. He was an assistant there, so he's been there for like 25 years total. And they fired him based on this hazing scandal that's everybody's been talking about the past couple of weeks. So basically, the story is this. I'm going to just give the story, and then I'm just kind of I don't have a particular opinion on the details of it, but I do have an opinion on some stuff outside of it. Um, so the school launched an investigation. They spent 6 months on it. They hired an outside counsel. They interviewed 50 people, and they decided last Friday,
I think. Yeah.
yeah, that they were going to suspend him for 2 weeks. No, they decided the week before that they were going to
Yeah.
suspend him for 2 weeks, and then they dumped it on a Friday, and then by Monday they announced that he was fired. So basically, I mean, the way I see it is the school newspaper and some other publications I think got a hold of the same thing. I mean, it probably wasn't that hard to figure out some of the 50 people that the outside counsel interviewed. So they went back and talked to some former players and got some details and put it out there, which created a bit of a firestorm. And then the only thing Northwestern could do at that point was fire him. And so basically, some former players basically said this has been going on a long time. I'm not going to go into the allegations, but there's sexual stuff going on, and
Yeah,
humiliating
it's pretty effed up.
humiliating people,
Sucks.
and way beyond having the freshmen carry your bags or pick up your dinner for you.
Yeah.
So I mean, my take on hazing is: look, I think most hazing is just shouldn't be done, but I think there's some things that like I described, beyond you know the freshman carrying the other guy's bags, or
Something that doesn't
some
involve just complete humiliation, like you
right.
can do different stuff that's kind of like, you're, I don't know what's another word for it, like you're, yeah, we're just fucking with you, kind of like
Right.
that, like that's just something guys do, which is fine, but this is obviously,
Yeah,
a
physical and
whole,
sexual abuse. And look, I don't
yeah,
want to hear. And I've heard a couple of people try to make the excuse, well, it builds team unity and that garbage. Like, I'm sorry, man. If you don't understand in 2023 that you can't do this. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't believe this stuff is happening in 2023. And then for Pat Fitzgerald to say, well, I didn't know anything about it. You can't be one of these football coaches that claims to know, well, I know what's best for everybody and I'm going to be involved in everything, and then come back and say, well, I didn't know that was going on. Like, that era of, well, I didn't know, is over. Like, that whole thing is done. Like, don't tell me you didn't know. Like, just get out of here with that absolute nonsense. I understand he's probably saying that because he wants to get the rest of the money on his contract. I get it. That's fine, but anybody who buys that, give me a break. Like, whatever he knew enough. He knew enough that shouldn't go on, and the coaches should be in charge of the locker room, and we can't let the players run the football team. You don't let the inmates run the asylum. But my biggest question, Clark, about this is, and this is partly my personality, is, well, if this is going on at Northwestern, what's going on in the SEC? That's my first question. If a good school, relatively good school like Northwestern, that apparently likes to do things the right way, based on the fact they don't win very many games, um, if they can't keep this under control, then I don't even want to know what's happening at Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia,
I
whatever
mean,
it is.
maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of hazing that goes on in fraternities. So and that gets pretty bad. It's a lot of binge drinking and insanity. So yeah, I mean maybe who knows. I'm not really surprised by any of this stuff because it's just you know uh, I don't know. It seems like you get a bunch of dudes together all the time. We tend to a lot of times we do stupid shit, and sometimes it goes to the point of being way, way, way too far. Not to excuse any of it, it's obviously horrible, but I mean, damn, like, and this is fucked up, but it's like, damn, you guys were doing all that, and you won. What did they win? One game last
They
year.
were 1-11 last year.
I'm reminded that wasn't there the coach at Maryland like a few years ago was like being a complete asshole, like yelling and screaming at the players all the time. And I think that did he get fired or something? And it's like, yeah, you're doing all that and you won like 4 games last year. It's like,
Yeah, and the thing is, Clark, just to, I mean, no, that, by the way, that's the best job you could get. Like, that's what I feel bad for him. The guy was making $5 million a year. They went 1-11 last year. Like,
yeah,
he was never going to get fired. He's, they love him at the school. And it's like, man, you're going to lose your job over this when you couldn't just, keep this under control? Like, just absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
So he'll resurface, probably as like a I don't know NFL assistant coach or something like that. You just want it'd be like remember Jim Tressel?
Mm-hmm.
Remember it just kind of he dumped out of there and then he was like an assistant coach with the Colts and then it all just kind of it's like yeah. So we won't be hearing much from Pat Fitzgerald anymore. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I think you give him a year off. I think he'll probably get an assistant job somewhere. If he still wants to coach. But yeah, so I just thought that was I don't understand. Like it's to me, it's not that complicated of a story. Now it is confusing that Northwestern did their own investigation, but they didn't release any of the investigation, so we don't really know. All we know is in 2 or 3 days they went from no, he's suspended for 2 weeks to he's fired. So
yeah.
that makes the school look pretty bad. But
I mean they trying to act like they the whole like you were saying the whole we didn't I didn't know and it's like well first of all I think that's BS. But even if it's not like you should know. I mean,
right.
That's
it's not
wasn't there stuff coming out that like players were making signals about it in the locker room or on the field
right.
or something?
Oh yeah, on the field during games.
Yeah, so the idea that he didn't know is absolutely ridiculous. And as far as I guess he said some stuff about after being fired, right?
He said he didn't know anything about it.
Yeah. He's just trying to collect whatever money's left in the in his contract. So, yeah, it's it's pretty terrible. I mean, especially for like the players who were victimized by it, they probably have a lot of,
Right. I mean, compared to like the University of Miami when they had all their stuff a while back, most of that stuff was off campus. Like that's one thing. Like if it's off campus and they're fraternizing with the wrong people, like okay, the coach has some responsibility in that, but I get that. But that's not what this was. It's in your locker room.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll move on from that. But I was just I was looking through doing a little prep for college football and just looking at schedules this season, kind of mapping out some games that I'm looking forward to, and I think there's some like obviously there's the Alabamas and Georgias, Michigans, Ohio States. Those teams are obviously going to be in the mix to go to the playoff. But I think some teams to watch. I think LSU has a real chance to win the whole thing. I think Florida State is going to be a really good team. I mean, I think they won 8 or 9 games last year, and they're really good. And then in the ACC, the way that Clemson has fallen off, I think that's going to be a really interesting conference this year between Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina. All of those teams, I don't give them a great chance, but I think all those teams have a shot to get to the playoff if things break their way. And the first week of the season, that LSU Florida State game is actually going to be a pretty big game, because that out of conference win that the team gets is going to be huge. when it comes down to the end of the season. So I think that's going to be really interesting. The other thing was I didn't realize that there's more teams added to the Big 12 now. So we got Central Florida, BYU, and Cincinnati and Houston are all in the Big 12 now. So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing when Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, all those teams have to play. Baylor, TCU, they all have to play, Central Florida, Cincinnati, BYU, because those teams are capable of beating them. So I think that conference is going to be really interesting too. When you go through the games, it's like, oh wow, there's like a really fun Big 12 game every week. So but typical, as with the college football schedule, as it always is, you typically have some dead weeks in there where it's hard to imagine. It's hard to find good games that you're interested in watching. The other teams, like in the Pac-12, I think Oregon, Washington, obviously USC, but I think Oregon and Washington are both going to be pretty good, and they'll be be fun to watch. Going down the stretch of the season. I think Michigan has, I was just going through the easiest and toughest schedules. Michigan has one of the easiest schedules in the country, and they get Ohio State at home at the end of the season. So I think Michigan has, if you just handicap it and you go which team has the best chance to get to the playoff, I think Michigan will be my number one. Because I think they're going to own the Big Ten. Their out-of-conference games are all terrible. They're going to win them easily. And, they've got a great chance. They have to play, they have Penn State and Michigan State on the road. But Michigan State, I looked at it right now, Michigan's favored by 20 over Michigan State. So I think that's going to be really something. But in the SEC is obviously going to be Alabama, Georgia, LSU. I think those are the three teams that'll be, duking it out to go to the playoffs. So yeah, I think it's
we'll be talking up Michigan all year, and
yep.
I don't know if it's going to be the same repeat of everybody's going to talk them up all year, and then it's going to be like if they have to play LSU or Bama or Georgia or something, it's like, can they really? Because they almost won a playoff game last year against TCU, so and they kind of fucked around that whole game. So that would be my prediction, that people are going to, kind of like Ohio State last year, they'll be talking up Michigan all year, and it'll kind of be like, yeah, but who the hell have they played?
Right.
And it'll get into well, you play who's in front of you or whatever, but it's like, it's still the Big Ten. I mean, it's not,
Right. Yeah, I think I really I've been talking about this since last season. I mean, I really like LSU because I just feel like all the teams that lost their quarterbacks, all the best teams basically lost they have to replace their quarterbacks, especially in the SEC. So right. I think LSU has a hell of a chance to get there. They have to play Alabama on the road, so that's obviously going to be pretty difficult. But they have the schedule. They got the team. I think it's going to be, and I think one of those teams in the ACC that could be really interesting if one of those teams finds a way in. And obviously I'd love to see USC in there too, just for, just to make it more fun.
We don't have to get too sad about that if they don't make it, because once we get to the 12-team playoff,
right, they're going to be pretty much in every year.
All these teams that were like, oh, I wonder if it's this team or this team or this team. It's not going to matter. They're all going to get it. Not all, right. But most of them.
Right.
So.
Right. I hope that, they're doing, I'm already seeing on the internet that this is, Texas people, or this is it. We're back. I'm already starting to see that early this year. So I certainly don't buy it, and we'll see what happens. Texas has to play at Alabama because they played the home last year. They played in Texas last year. So we'll know pretty early if Texas is any good. But yeah, so that was my thing. I was just kind of mapping out, every weekend what 3 or 4 games you want to see, and it's really it gets kind of difficult because you don't know. Every season is kind of its own thing, and you don't know all of a sudden, like last year, that Texas TCU game in the middle of the season actually ended up being a really important game because TCU was undefeated. Like there's going to be some game like that comes up that nobody's paying attention to now.
Yeah.
Anywho, so I got some NBA stuff. So, the Damian Lillard Damian Lillard situation still has not been resolved. What I think there's a couple things that jump out at me that kind of bother me about it. Number one is people acting like, people going, oh, well, the Miami Heat's offers, that's not good enough. Like, you're not going to get Dame with that offer. That's not going to be good enough. And, while I've already said this, I don't think the Heat can make the best offer. There hasn't been a better offer presented yet. So while everyone's telling me, oh, the Heat's offer is not, okay, well then give me the better offer. Like, find where it is. Because reportedly, Philadelphia won't give up Tyrese Maxey. The Clippers are not going to give up Paul George. Like, the Celtics are not going to give up Jaylen Brown. Like, where is it? Like, I don't quite get it.
Yeah, I mean, well, and the thing that maybe I talked about this before. I think everyone needs to anything that you hear come out of Portland, or if anything leaks out of Miami, which it doesn't sound like anything's really leaked out of Miami, but if anything does, or whatever Damian Lillard says on Twitter or whatever, you got to take all this with a grain of salt, okay? Because this is I don't know what you want to call it. It's a game, okay? Where you got two sides and they're like, Miami wants to get this player, but they don't want to give up there's stuff they don't want to give up, and the Trailblazers want to get certain stuff, but they don't want to give other stuff up. So it's a whole thing, and you can't just. I see way too much of this, where people are just sort of taking all these statements at face value, and to me that's just poor analysis, because it's like, they're leaking this stuff to serve whatever their particular agenda is. So, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe one way to read this situation, and this could be totally wrong. The Heat reportedly what the Heat have offered, I looked at it, and it seems to me that if they made that offer first, and they're just like, all right, well, let's see what Portland does, or let's see if someone else is going to try to drive up the value. And like you said about Philadelphia, there's stuff they're not willing to give up. So maybe Miami just needs to wait. Just sit tight and wait. And so maybe this drags on another month or two. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't believe. I hate when people start giving absolutes. Well, you drafted Scoot Henderson. You can't bring Damian Lillard to training camp. Yes, you can. Like, let's stop pretending. Oh God, it's got to get done now, and it's got to. It doesn't have nothing. There's no have to about any of this stuff. They don't have to trade him. They can hang. I think they probably. I think they probably will eventually, but they don't have to do it now. And this idea that, oh well, the market's really not that, but there's plenty of teams that want him. There's just not this amazing blockbuster offer. And I think part of the another thing is it's really hard. It's difficult in the NBA to make trades like this. I think we act like, oh, they just happen on a whim. It's hard when you have 40% of the league was a free agent, so they can't be traded right now. Right, so you're taking so get rid of those guys. Those players aren't eligible. So and then there's only a handful of teams that can actually he would actually fit on. Right, not that he's difficult to fit. It's just a lot of these teams they've already decided what path they're on. So he can't. There's all these teams. You can get rid of a bunch of those teams. Then you can get rid of the teams that aren't winning. Then you can get rid of the teams that don't have the cap space or the money. So it's just limited by the fact that this is just kind of how it works. I think he probably gets traded. I think he probably gets traded to Miami, but it's not an absolute. Who knows? Somebody could change their mind before the season starts and come in with an offer, and all right, that changes everything. So yeah, I think we're overreacting to this and acting like, oh man, this offer by the Heat is just listen, if he's meant to go to the Heat, he will. It'll happen. If they can figure out a way to do it, they will. Now, is that an absolute? No, I have no idea. All I know is I would just appreciate people stop telling me, oh, the Miami offer, like that's garbage. That's not going to happen. It's like, okay, where's the better offer?
Well, and if people have been talking a lot about doing a 3-team trade because Portland does not want Tyler Hero, and I understand that. I mean, it basketball wise, it doesn't make sense. But if you're Miami, making a 3-team trade is hard. Okay, so why don't open the door to that? Put your offer in and wait, and see, let Portland make the first move. It's kind of like in The Wolf of Wall Street. Whoever talks first loses. So you just kind of wait it out.
Well, and I think I think people we're acting like now all of a sudden Tyler Hero's a garbage player now. Like I just feel
Yeah,
like
I don't.
because he didn't play in the finals, I feel like everybody's like, who is that guy? It's like if he had averaged 20 points a game in the finals, I just think this would be a completely different conversation. We're acting like, now listen, is he a franchise player? No. But
No.
but what are we talking about here? He's still a good player. Most teams in the NBA would want him. You want Tyler Hero or Jordan Poole? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty close, but I think if that's what we're talking about, look at Jordan Poole just got traded. Like, so let's not act like Tyler Hero is like, well, forget it. Who cares about that? Like, he's a pretty good NBA player.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, and again, if I was going to guess on it, I would venture to guess that it will end up being a 3-team trade. But if you're Miami, you don't open the door to that yet, unless you have to, because those trades are complicated. But I mean,
yep,
yeah, I mean, just put it this way: if Portland doesn't want Tyler, there's teams out there that would want Tyler Hero. Okay,
absolutely.
I mean, his contract's not ridiculous or anything. Like there's teams that would take that on. So they can find a way to, like, again. I think it'll be a 3-team trade, and they can find a way to pull that off. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe Philadelphia changes its mind at some point.
Yeah. So, yeah, so I want to talk about this other NBA topic, and then we'll move on and talk about the movies. I keep seeing, down when it relates to the Jaylen Brown with the Celtics. Well, oh my God, they have. Well, first of all, it is weird they haven't offered him that max contract yet. I don't think it's that big a deal, but I think it's something to look out for. And so I think we need to change our thinking a little bit on the way these NBA contracts are going. Where I just keep hearing, I'm watching all the TV shows and the radio shows. Oh, you can't pay Jaylen Brown that much. That's crazy. You can't do that. Guys, do people? I don't think people realize the scale that we're talking about. The NBA salary cap is going up 10 to 13% every year. Okay, that's what's going to happen. And in 2 years, when the new TV deal starts, it's going to be doing that. That's what it's going to do every year. So, but the current salary cap, which by the way you can go over, is 134 million. Okay, at this rate, in 5 years, it's going to be at least 190 million. So we're acting like, oh my God, you can't do that. It's so bad. You're with the new rules, you can't do blah blah blah. And it's like, actually, if you're going to sign people to max contracts, you want to do it right now. This is absolutely the best time to do it, because the cap's
if
going
you want to have a gigantic contract, you can basically, from what people are saying, it's like you can have when the new rules fully kick in, you really can have 2.
right.
And then the other contracts need to be smaller than that to make it work. And like you're saying, the salary cap's going to go up. So, let's just, for people who are saying, oh, you can't sign him for that much. Okay, well, you're not cool with having like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown be the 2 best players on the team that are making the most money.
Right.
Like, to me, that sounds fine. I understand that the rest of the team has some problems and stuff, but that's not necessarily, a Tatum and Jaylen Brown thing. That could just be the makeup of the roster, or coaching, or whatever, or
Right.
just the idea that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to get better over the next few years. So,
Right, and they're young, and they're all NBA players.
yep,
They're young. They play almost all the games. They don't get hurt that much. Like I don't understand what the downside is. Everybody's like, oh man, we can't. Why not? Like this is what this is what it costs. Like, you know what I mean? When you have to go get your car fixed, like you got to get back and forth to work. So yeah, is it a little more expensive than it probably should be? Yeah. But what are you going to do? I don't understand. And that's not to say they don't have a choice. Well, they have a choice.
yeah,
But why isn't this the best choice? Like, I don't understand it. Like, this is a great choice. You're going to have him on a contract that 3 years from now will be a bargain.
yeah.
Like,
Well,
I just don't.
like, if you were like, oh, we don't want to do this, all right, what are you going to trade him for? Because typically in the
Right.
NBA, when you try to trade a guy like that, you don't get the same value back.
Right.
Like there's no way. So yeah, again, it's one of the it's one of the most disingenuous arguments that comes up in sports analysis. Don't tell me don't do this unless you have an alternative that's better. Because if you're saying don't do this, you have to say why. Which part of the reason why is there's a better alternative to the thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think people get lost in the numbers, Clark. Well, you can't pay him $60 million. It's like, yeah, but
Do you
you're
understand how
not
much the other
you're
players are making and like what
right.
it's
You're not paying attention. You're just going crazy about the number. You're not paying attention to what 60 million actually means, right?
right?
60 million is, it's about 50% of the salary cap, but you can spend up to 170 million without getting into the luxury tax. So it's really what is it? A third? So I've started to hear this. Oh, well, you can have two. You can't really have. What are you going to do with two max guys? Then how are you going to pay the rest of your roster? It's like, actually, you'll be just fine. So I just
Having
don't.
three max guys right now is
Right.
like Phoenix. Yeah, that's a problem.
Well, and the other thing is though, but Clark, I think, like I said, in a couple of years, it might be different because if you have three max guys signed to the current
Right.
structure, the current percentages, that's one thing. But 3 years from now, when the cap's gone up 40%, now it's different. So that's one thing where it's like, and that's the problem with Phoenix is that they have to win now because in 2 or 3 years from now, it's, Durant's going to be old and, so
Right.
anyway. All right. So, yeah, we don't have a whole lot of time, but let's move on. Let's move on to your movie takes. So we
Oh,
talked
okay.
about Indiana Jones. We both saw it in the theater. Listen, my general take on Indiana Jones, along with Star Wars, is we generally know what we're getting. These things, they're providing a template. It's a rinse and repeat type of thing. I think they did get a little sideways at the end of the Star Wars franchise. They started to kind of go off on their own tangent, and so that I do kind of agree with you. Star Wars got a little crazy, but honestly, I think this Indiana Jones movie delivered what it was supposed to. I think it actually made its budget now. I think it's actually in the black instead of the red.
Well,
And
based on what they spent to make the movie, because then you got to factor in marketing, because they spend like hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing. So they're
yeah,
probably I mean, breaking even is for that movie still a question because they've the way that which I don't understand this. I don't know why the hell they do this. But basically, it seems like the way studios have set things up is that they'll make these gigantic movies, and it's like, okay, this better be like the highest grossing movie of the year in order for us to even have a shot at making a profit. And it's like,
right,
what kind of business model is this? This to me, this
right,
is it's like we're gonna do this, and then it's like, well, no, we can't. We can't make smaller, you know, mid-budget movies that might actually have real actors in it who are doing interesting stuff. It's like no, we can't do that. We got to put it all into like a few movies, and if they fail, we're fucked. Like to me, that's But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. I don't know why they've. It's like with Avatar too. They're like, well, in order for us to make a profit, this has to be with the fifth highest grossing movie of all time. It's like, why? Who greenlit this? What the? Anyway, so Indiana Jones. Okay. Overall, it was good, solid.
yep,
Maybe I give it like a B minus, maybe a
yeah.
B, maybe.
I'm with you.
Um, uh, and I think so. I mean, yeah. Overall, it was decent. I would say Kingdom of the Crystal Skull's better, and the first, well, Raiders of the Lost Ark and Lost Crusade are the best two, and I think they're
Right.
clear, they're far and away better than basically all the other ones. Um, so this one was good. It did have, I think the issue with this is that if you want to argue that they shouldn't have made this movie, I agree with that. Okay, I mean, to be honest, Harrison Ford was probably too old. The last Indiana Jones movie they made in 2008, and we're, what, 18 years later. So yeah, you could argue they couldn't have made this movie because the problem you run into is that Harrison Ford is old, which means Indiana Jones is old. Okay? And in order to accurately portray old guys, you know, they're going to look kind of, at times they're going to look kind of frail and old and, out of sorts and whatever else, you know. Now, I think they had some good, I guess, reasons for how they portrayed him, because his kid died and that screwed up his marriage and whatever. Um, and I guess that fits. I think his character. I guess that fits. You could argue that it's kind of disappointing that you have to put the hero in a situation where everything's falling apart around him. Um, but again, that's just kind of I don't know. That's sort of like a preference thing, I guess, where it's like if you're not cool with it, you're not cool with it. If you're okay with it, you're okay with it, and that's just kind of the way it goes. Um, but I mean, like I said, overall the movie was good. The problems I had were, some of the dialogue, the way they wrote it for what's the for Shaw, Helena Shaw, was ridiculous. Like they're during the car chase, like she said something, and it's like, okay, did you just have a feminist write this? And again, I'm not criticizing.
You mean
Feminists per
Phoebe
se.
Waller Bridge?
Yeah, the way she said, like
Okay.
he's like, he says, what would your father think of the way you are? And she's like, whatever she said. I'm independent and free and I'm just like, okay, you're in the middle of a car chase. People don't talk like that. Can you not? Come on. Like, Jesus. Like, that literally took me completely out of the movie for a few minutes where I was like, um, but I can kind of get past that. The action set pieces were pretty good overall. I thought those were pretty entertaining. You had some moments that were kind of funny. Not as good as the original movies, but of course it's not going to be that as good. And I think
Right.
the main criticism, a lot of the criticisms people have are, well, before I get to the third act, I'll just say that one of the main criticisms is um, Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, and they're saying that she's just kind of unlikable, which to an extent I agree with, but I do think she sort of has an arc in the movie where she sort of starts off one way and then I think she evolves a little bit over the course of the movie where she's just like, oh, I'm just after money, but then I think, as he's talking to her about, yeah, why did you memorize all this stuff just for money? It's like, no, it's because your father worked on it and you're trying to connect to your father, which is sort of
Right.
like what Indiana Jones did in The Last Crusade, where he's trying to connect with his father over the Holy Grail. So that kind of made sense. So I think some of the criticism of that goes a little far. Again, she was kind of annoying in parts of the movie. I think they're kind of lumping that together with other bad movies that have been made where they do things with female characters that are kind of, you know, uh, where it's like the female character has to take the male character down a peg every chance she gets, and they've definitely done that in some movies. I don't think this is like the most egregious example of that. Now the third act people are criticizing because Indiana Jones gets shot and then he basically doesn't do very much during the third act. It's her and then the kid, flying the plane through the
Right.
time portal or whatever. And then Indiana Jones just wants to stay there. He doesn't want to go back to his time. And some people were like upset that it's like, oh well, I don't want to see my hero like all broken down like that. And again, I understand that. And if that's not something that you like, well, you probably shouldn't see the movie. Like, and again, if you want to argue that they shouldn't have made the movie, okay, fine, they probably shouldn't have. Okay. Um,
But isn't the point that Harrison Ford is the grizzled old guy who manages to come through in the end? Isn't that the point? Hasn't he always been kind of broken down anyway?
Sort of. Again, which is why I'm still saying the movie's good because
Right.
I have some criticism of the third act, but it's not that as bad as some people on the internet are making it out to be, in my opinion. So, um, yeah, I think there's something to that. I mean, again, when I saw some reviews like, oh, this is the perfect conclusion to the Indiana Jones series. It's like, no, The Last Crusade was the perfect conclusion. They decided to make two more. They really didn't need to. Okay, so
Right. So let's pivot to this. What do you think about making more Indiana Jones movies with replacing Harrison Ford with somebody else?
well, okay, how are you going to do that? You're going to make prequels?
What do you mean? How are you going to do that? They're rebooting every movie known to man all the time. You don't have to continue the same. Why do you have to continue the same timeline?
No, don't reboot Indiana Jones. Come on. No.
Why
Just
not? It's
leave
just like
no,
as we've
no.
talked about this
Leave some
before.
shit alone. Okay?
What?
It's
Why? It's James Bond. You just replace James Bond.
no. Okay. I understand what you're saying. Get another idea that has similarities to Indiana Jones and do that. Don't make more Indiana don't reboot Indiana Jones. Come on. Like that's um just, can people with certain things can we leave stuff alone? We're not going back to the 70s or the 60s and being like, "Oh, let's
But
remake this and turn it into like just leave
no, but
stuff where it is.
I'm not
Let's
saying
remake The Godfather." Like what just
no,
leave
no, no,
stuff
no,
where
no,
it
no, no.
is.
I'm not saying remake it, but I'm saying Tom Cruise does a Mission Impossible movie every 2 years, right? We keep changing James Bonds. Like how many of those movies have there been? What's the difference? Why don't we just we could have there's an untold amount of history that you could use, you know.
Come up with another idea. Okay? Like seriously, come up with a new freaking idea.
Clark, they're trying that. None of those ideas make any money.
No. They're not coming up with good new ideas. They're coming up with they have supposedly new ideas, and it's really just crap. Let's just deconstruct all this stuff we used to like, and we'll get all meta with it. It's like that's not an idea.
I'm just saying, like, you could make it, put it on a streaming platform. I just think, they screwed this up in the beginning. Not screwed it up, but Spielberg and George Lucas wanted to do other stuff, so they couldn't just keep making them. But I don't see any reason why they shouldn't have made one every 3 years. I mean, I just think, I think it's good. It's well done. I don't think you need to spend $300 million to make it. I think we're now getting, it's a bit ridiculous to spend that much money on that movie. I think, that's me personally. Now maybe you lose too much and maybe I'm an idiot, but I think you could do this much more. I think you could do it much more efficiently if they chose to. But anyway, the bottom line is you like the movie. So, what do you got to say about Mission Impossible before we get out of here?
Okay, so I saw Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 yesterday. Um, it was good. If you're asking me to rank it, the last one was better. I just think the action scenes, the set pieces that they had were just more. I don't know. It was just more compelling. This one, I didn't feel like they really had much humor in it. Um, and also, look, this is the seventh movie. Okay, I don't really need to hear long dialogue scenes with you guys because they had some dialogue scenes and it just sort of meanders around and I'm like, what the fuck are you people even talking about? I get it. Every single movie now is Ethan Hunt has been disavowed. He's on the run and everybody's chasing after him and there's a tracking shot of him running, and he's doing all these death-defying stunts and stuff. I get it. I don't need long dialogue scenes about that. And then they're trying to talk about the bad guy or they're trying to talk about the other stuff that's going on in the movie, and it just kind of, I'm listening to them like, this doesn't make any sense. You guys are just like going around in circles. I'm like, oh god, just get to the. I mean, the only really good dialogue scenes were between Ethan Hunt and they brought back Kittredge, the same actor who played Kittredge in the first one, and those were actually pretty good, But for the most part, the rest of it was just very like, you guys are just repeating the same kind of dialogue. It's like, well, we got to save the world, and I don't care about I care about your life more than mine, and I'm not going to let my team die just to complete the mission, and I know the right way to do this thing, even if the government doesn't, and I'm going to fix everything. Like, I get it. That's what they're all about. Okay, you don't need these like, and then also the thing that they kept doing was, speaking of, people don't talk like that. they would have these dialogue scenes where there'd be like 4 or 5 people in a room, right? And they would like complete each other's sentences, and the camera pans around all of them, or it cuts to all of them. So it'd be like, you know, this AI bot is this and this and this, and it also does this, and it also does this, and it also does this, and it's just, I don't know why, I'm just sitting there watching it going, oh god, just get to the damn action scenes, like, good lord. I mean, it just, you know, and again, part of the problem is that, like I said, they've done 7 of these, and part of the problem when you do, you know, not okay. There's been 7 of them. It's not like every single one of them. Well, actually, no. Pretty much every single one of them is Ethan Hunt is, you know, has gone rogue, and he's doing his own thing, and everybody's coming after him. That's basically all the movies except for like the second one. Okay, every other one is like Ethan Hunt's gone rogue, and we got to catch him before he does whatever, and then he sort of he gets the MacGuffin or whatever it is, and he saves the day, and everything's fine. You know, I get it. The movie was actually too long, and also I just feel like I don't know. There was something, and I'm probably missing something. There was something about the 6th one where it hooked me in like right away, and because I remember watching it in the theater and just being like all the action scenes and stuff, like it was awesome. You know, this one, I don't know. You know, I mean, like the thing in the airport, that was pretty cool. You know, the car chase, yeah, it was all right. The kind of the ending thing was with the train was pretty good, but yeah, it was just good. I don't think it was totally amazing or anything. And then some people, I'm seeing these people talking about it. They're like, "Oh, well, it has to do with AI, and that's really poignant right now." And I'm like, just stop. Like it's a fucking movie. It's, you know, I don't know. I just
All right. Yeah, listen.
Around, and you know.
I mean, listen. My biggest takeaway from this conversation is you liked both movies, so that's good. I think that's you know, I think
Overall,
that's
Mission Impossible. I mean, actually, both of them were probably a little too long, to be perfectly honest.
right.
Like,
Yeah,
a lot of these movies should not be over 2 hours. Like, you
yeah,
guys
I agree with you there.
you need to chop some stuff down, like, you know.
So, but listen, I'm looking forward to it. 2026, Indiana Jones and Ramsey's Tomb. See, that's what I mean, Clark. It's all you got to do. It's Indiana Jones and blank. That's it. You can just keep making them. I don't see any reason why they can't be like James Bond movies. You bring in different actors. You know, I like Chris Pratt as the new Indiana Jones. You know, I don't know how you feel about that, but I think he works. I think he works. He's got a good sense of humor. I think that's so, you know, I'm all for just giving me more Indiana Jones. No, we don't need to reboot it. We can just tell a different story every time. That's all.
Just come up with a different idea. Leave it alone. We've done enough. It's good. Just leave it. Let it stand.
I'm all for coming up with different ideas, but what you're gonna? I mean, are they gonna ruin Indiana Jones? I don't think so. I think it's a, like I said, it's a rinse and repeat formula.
Diminishing returns. I mean, they're not having the opening that they expected. So,
yeah. All right, folks. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Everybody have a lovely evening.